Hello, and welcome to the last episode of Coding for Coders. My name is Don Patmore, the trainer here at Trainwell. And over the last few weeks, we've been looking at the programming fundamentals in a sort of casual way. So we looked at variables as being containers for stuff. We've looked at conditionals being boiling down to yes or no questions. We've looked at lists and loops. And last week, we covered ways we could handle problems in our code and make sure that we could at least solve them gracefully and tell the user what's been happening. I thought this week I would actually show you how all of these work in a real coding environment. Most of the series we looked at using pseudocode, and that was a way to make sure that you didn't have to have all of this stuff set up on your computer. But now we're actually going to use Python to create a small, simple program. And what I'm going to do is hopefully you can identify some of the areas that we looked at. And I've uploaded this on GitHub. You'll be able to download this. There's a link below on the show notes. But hopefully this will give you confidence to be able to practice coding on your own. And if you have any questions, please just put them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them. So what are we going to build? We are going to build a divisibility checker. And the idea is that someone should be able to enter a number and we should tell them what numbers divide that number entirely. So for example, if they type in the number 100, we should be able to tell them it's divisible by 2, 5, 10, 20, etc. I've broken this down into sort of four small missions. The first one is have a list of divisors. The next is get input from the user and make sure it's a real number. Go through the list and check which numbers divide that number. Return that list back to the user, and then give them an option to do another number or just to stop. So that's how I'm going to do it here, as you can see in my coding environment. And as I said, I'm going to be using Python for this, but you can apply this to any programming language you wish to work in. So here I'm going to get a list of divisors. Well, I'm going to be using the divisors 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11. And that's a list of numbers. So hopefully this should tell you that I want to create a list. I'm going to start and end with my square brackets. 2, 5, 7, 9, and 11. And I forgot about 6, so let's put 6 in there. There you go. And it's great. So far sorted. But I probably want to put it in a box where I can use that elsewhere in the program. So let's just call that divisors and do that. Good. First one so far, so good. Next, I want to get the input from the user and check that it's valid. So to do that, I am going to use a Python function or Python method called input. And input is very simple. It asks me, what do I want to tell the user to do? So I'm going to say, please enter a number. And because it's never sure about the type of information you're asking for, it automatically assumes that anything the person types goes into a string box. So here I said ask for a number, but now I'm going to try and run this. And so I'm going to type 32, and that's fine. And I'm going to type cheddar, and that's also fine. Okay, cheddar is not great for me because I need to work with numbers. But according to the input, it doesn't care. It's a string, and it's for it puts it in a string box, and it's fine. What I need to do now is I need to change that into a number. So to do that, I'm going to use another method or another function called int. And what this does is it takes the information inside and puts it into an int box, provided that it's an actual number. If it's not a number, it'll complain, as we'll find out very soon. Here, 32 is fine, but if I type markers, okay, it complains. And as you can see, the complaint is it's a value error. It can't turn markers into a number that makes sense. This is not a good thing if we give this to a user and their cat walks across the keyboard as they're typing. Cats are not really good for picking up precise keys. So I need to figure out a way to make sure that I can handle this gracefully. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a try except exception in this case, or try catch exception. So here, let's just do that. And let's go with int type a number, because that's what I want to try and do. So I'm going to put that here in the try block. Okay, and then the exception is a value error, because that's what I had before. And what do I want to do? Well, I want to tell the person that it's not a number. do that. Good. So now we can test that. And it's good. As you can see now, I'm being able to test bits of it along the way rather than trying to write everything and then kind of fingers crossed at the end. So there you go. So 32, that's fine. If I type cheese, okay, I get my error. This is an error. This isn't a number. Please try again. So far that is good. Let me just make that a little bit smaller. That's so far so good. But the problem is, right now, if someone types in an incorrect, types in something that's not a number, the program just stops. It doesn't allow them to try again. And I want them to try again until I get something that works for me, a real number. So if you think about it, I want to keep them in a loop of trying until they get it right. So hopefully that is a good clue that I want to use a while loop, which is something we talked about while we talked about for loops. So here, there you go. And what I want to say is, well, as long as I don't have a valid number, and it's not equal to true, okay, remember, when we're looking at conditionals, we want something that evaluate that boils down to either yes or no. So is this a valid number? Yes or no. Okay. So what I'm saying is this isn't a valid number, then I want you to do this whole bit here. So if I do this, just format that a little bit and come up here. So what I'm saying, valid number isn't true. Now, what is valid number? This, as the program is just highlighting, goes, I don't know what that is. So I need to probably tell it what it's something. So let's just say valid number. And I want to start off by saying they're probably not going to put a valid number in. So I'm going to say that that is a false thing. That is a false idea. There isn't a valid number just yet. So what I have now is I'm saying it doesn't have a valid number. While that is not true, I want you to try and get a number. And if they do have a right number, then I want to say, hey, I do have a valid number. Otherwise, I'm going to trap the error, and I want them to try again. So it's going to keep going through this while loop. And I'll show you what it looks like now. So I'm going to type gibberish, type some more cat words. I'm going to type 22 and then some cheese, and then I'm going to type 34. And as you can see, once I type the number, it lets me out of the while loop, which is good. I want to keep them inside until they do the thing I need them to do to keep moving forward. Right. So far, I've been able to get the information from the user, check that it's a real number, keep them there until they give me the right number. But unfortunately, I don't actually have the number that I need to have. So what can I do is I have this piece here on line 7 that gives me the input for the user. It would be really nice if maybe I could put that in a box so I can take it with me throughout the rest of the code. So let's try that. So let's call it enter number. And because I don't have a value for it, I'm going to say it has no value. It has no value at all. It's none. But I'm going to say I'm going to change the value here. So enter number. And do that. So now, if I go down here to line 13, and I type print enter number, just to check what I get out. Run that code again. That's good so far. And let's go 678. Okay, good. So now that I have my number actually coming out of this bit, let me just close off that little error there so people can see. So far, I've been able to get a list of divisors. I've been able to get the user input, check that it's an actual number. And now that I have the number to work with, now I can go through to part 2. Go through each list and check each number. Well, if I'm going through each item in the list, that tells me the best thing I could probably use is a for loop. So let's do that. So for divisor, so remember we want the current counter to be the current thing that I'm looking at in my list of divisors. Divisors. Let's make sure I've typed that correctly. Divisors. Yep. Okay. And what I'm going to do now, just as a test, is I just want to print them. So I'm just going to print. So and it's going to go 6, 7, 8. And as you can see, it goes through and it types print divisor 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11, which is exactly what I had in my list. So far that's working. What I want to do though is I want to check, I want to be able to test that that number will divide the user entered number completely. And the way that I test that from a programming perspective is check if there's no remainder. So if you remember back in school, if you had 10 apples and you tried to put them in groups of 3, one apple would be left on its own. There'd be one as a remainder. But if I have 10 apples and I put them into groups of 5, I have 2 groups and no remainder. So the remainder there is 0. So I know that 5 can divide 10 completely because there's no remainder. So that's what I'm going to do here from a programming perspective. I'm going to make sure that if the division that happens has no remainder. And the way we do that in programming is we use something called the modulus. And modulus, it sounds kind of a fancy word, but when we type it out, it's just a percent sign. So here, I'm going to say if the user entered number, actually, and I'm going to take the modulus of that, and actually I don't need those. And I'm going to say, well, if it's equal to 0, well, then it divides completely. And so I want to take that number and add it to the list of things that I want to return. I want to show the user this is one of the numbers that divides your number completely. Well, how do I capture that? How do I capture that that's the number? Well, I may have more than one number, so I should probably keep a list of those divisors. So list of divisors. How about something a bit more descriptive? Divisors, and it's currently empty. So what I'm going to do here is that if it's true, then I want to say return list of divisors. I want to add that particular divisor to my list. Okay. So if we go through, let's say we're using 100, for example, and we get to 2 as a divisor, clearly that works, so 2 is going to be added to the list. But 3 won't be added to the list. 5 will be added to the list, but not 6, and so on. Now, at the end of it, once I'm all done, make sure I just do that. Okay, at the end of it, I now want to display my results. So here, I can simply do print, just say your number is divisible by, and then just return back the list of those things. Return list of divisors. Cool. So let's try that now. Let's go 6, 7, 8. And as you can see, that number is divisible by 2, 3, and 6, which makes sense. It's an even number, so it's divisible by 2. If I add up 6 plus 7 is 13. 13 plus 8 is 21. 21 is a multiple of 3, so it's divisible by 3. And if it's divisible by 2 and divisible by 3, it's going to be divisible by 6. So that makes sense. So far, that works out pretty well. So we've got the divisors. We've checked that it's a real number. We've gone through and made sure we've got a list. We return back the list. And as you can see, the program stops at the end. So what I probably want to think about doing is giving the user an option to continue with another number if they want to continue. So the way I could do that, if you see here, I have my while loop checking for a number. Maybe I can have a while loop that keeps going until there's a way to stop. So let's try that. And I want to do this. Where's a good place to do that? I think maybe here at the top. So I'm going to say while to continue is equal to true. Okay, I say that. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to indent all of those because that's what Python needs from me. Okay, so it's going to do all of this, and I'm going to say, make sure my variable at the top is to continue. Okay, and down here, I'm going to say, sorry, I'm just thinking a second. So what I want to do now is I basically want to ask the user if they want to continue. So the way I can do that is I can say, well, I can just ask them a question. And I can say, user option equals input. Do you want to try again? Okay. And what I can check is say if they type, and I might actually helpful in saying what are the options. Okay. And I can say if the user option is equal to no, then what I want to do, actually I don't need those. That's from my JavaScript days. Is that I want to set that variable up here to continue to false. So, okay. And what that will do is while it's true, it will keep going. But as soon as the person says no, then that will set it to false. When it comes back up here, that will no longer be true. And then it will stop. And in fact, I could go one step further and just do this. Remember, we talked about the truthiness of things when we were talking about conditionals and loops. And here's the while loop will go, as long as it's true, I want you to continue. So down here, I can just actually just switch that to false. And then now while it's false, it will just stop. And that will be the end of the program. So let's try all together now. So let's see if this works. Check that. It's not really a number. So let's try a 546 this time. And it's visible. Do I want to try again? Yes. And we keep going. So do that. Do 76. And then I say no. Oops. And as you can see, because it was expecting a capital N, it didn't work. So just do that 245, and I would type N, and now it stops. So we have a program that does all of the stuff that we've talked about. We've set variables, we've set conditionals, we've set loops, we've set while loops, we've set methods, we've used methods, and we've used exceptions to make sure our program keeps going. So I would love you to download this. It's entirely free, and play with it. I've also added some sort of challenge questions at the bottom to see if you can stretch your knowledge about programming in general, about Python. Let me know how you get on. I would love to hear it. And if you have any more questions or anything else you want to explore, do add it in the comments below. This has been great, and I will definitely do more in the future. But for now, that's all from me. Happy coding, keep learning, and I will see you next time.